Why did William Morris create this iconic home? How did the vernacular, the Gothic and the medieval come together to make one new style as a reaction to what was going on? I'm here to explore this international icon in architecture, the Red House in Bexley Heath, London. This building led to the ideas which resulted in the arts and crafts movement. In 1859, William Morris decided to construct a rural house for himself and his new wife, Jane, within commuting distance of central London, and they moved into their new home in 1860. He employed his architect friend Philip Webb to help him design and construct the house. The architecture of the Red House was inspired by styles of British design from the 13th century, and Morris described the building as being very medieval in spirit, and was a definite attempt to adapt late Gothic methods of building to the needs of the 19th century. We can see that this building is a physical manifesto for what was to come, the arts and crafts movement. Nearly all the key elements of what will be there in that hugely important movement are embodied here. First of all, this was a response to the voracious industrialization that was ripping into the British nation at that time. Secondly, the use of the crafts and the resurrection of the idea of craft skills as being in themselves art. Thirdly, the idea that all of the arts should be brought together into harmony, much in the manner of a Gothic cathedral. And fourthly, there was a deep morality and philosophical position surrounding how this building was created. A moral dimension that became the aesthetic dimension at the end of the century. And much of that was fired by the single most important thinker in British and international culture in the arts at that time, John Ruskin. Morris adopted Ruskin's philosophy of rejecting the tawdry, mass-produced industrial manufacture of decoration in favour of a return to hand craftsmanship. We can see this idea of craftsmanship everywhere in the house. Just look at this, the carving of this balustrade and the detail and the references back to the Gothic, to what these people thought was a golden age of the crafts. The design of the house was plain almost to severity and depended for its effect on its solidity and fine proportion. This was somewhat radical at the time, as most contemporary buildings were heavily furnished with ornamentation. Throughout the interior spaces, exposed brick arches and timber framing, frequently laid out asymmetrically, served to continue the themes of the building's exterior. Windows were positioned to suit the design of the rooms rather than to fit an external symmetry. Thus, a variety of different window types are present, including tall casements, hip dormers, round-headed sash windows and bullseye windows. Webb's deliberately overlarge brick fireplaces formed the visual centerpieces of the principal rooms. These were echoed in the large chimney stacks of the exterior. So the house very quickly after 1860 became a kind of salon, an English salon of young artists and poets who gathered around Morris, and significantly painting came to the fore. Between them they created murals in a number of the rooms, and we can see them here now. Often portraits of themselves, but in medieval clothing and flattened out. Painting is not about easel painting for these people, it's about mural painting. It's about painting as decorating architecture. This idea that great art comes out of happy and close communities was really something that John Ruskin had been promoting for generations. But when we walk around the exterior, we realise that it was an important building at the start of something which impacted heavily on the architects of the early modern movements in Europe. Not many buildings in 1860 had a well like this outside the house, and very clearly it's not just the style but also the function of things, where the architect and William Morris liked the idea of the medieval. They used the medieval, but they wanted to create a modern architecture. And when you look up at this building, especially around these facades, there's a powerful asymmetry and a juxtaposition of big forms, which is far more typical of the end of the 19th century than 1860 when this building went up. It's very clear that Morris wanted nature to be part of his building. Therefore, the garden was unique in its design. The garden doesn't simply surround the house. It's powerfully integrated into the building itself. The garden was divided into 4 small squares by trellises on which roses grew. The flower beds were bordered with lavender and rosemary, while lilies and sunflowers were planted to go alongside. White jasmine, roses, honeysuckle and passion flowers were planted to climb up the walls of the house. These were Morris's favourite plants. In future decades, he would make use of these plant forms from his garden to make his wallpaper and tapestries and textile designs. So the reason why this little building is so iconic is not simply because it was the home of William Morris. It's also a tremendous starting point for so many things which came afterwards in the following decades of the 19th century. Many of the core ideas that were developed by Philip Webb, the architect, and William Morris, they became the main milestones and support systems for successive generations of modernist thinkers. From Art Nouveau even through to the Bauhaus, the story of modern art in many respects begins here.